Starts in 3 minutes.
So it's connected.
There's only 3 people on it, I can tell. Oh, maybe more. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm muted. That's good. Oh, there's a couple of names. It's good they muted me. Looks like 6 people: Ricardo, Oliver, Michael, PSMT, whatever it is, Ashman. I got his names. A lot of them are people from these moderators. There's another Dave G. So I guess I'm asking which Dave I am. It doesn't matter too much. Live hand. What the guy? Oh yeah.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good night to every one of you. Welcome to our Hangout for our free online course, Access to Impact Investment for Social Enterprises. We are here with Urs Jäger, our academic director here at Viva Idea, and Daniela Bolivar, director of communications here at Viva Idea as well. In the chat room, you're going to find Christina. She's from the Social Finance Academy from the Roots of Impact. They are in Germany. So hello to Christina as well and Maxime. They are part of our team. And in the other side of the camera, we have Brian and Oliver that here for our helping us making this hangout for all of you. So welcome, Urs. Thank you for being here.
Before we start, first, thanks a lot for participating in this MOOC to all of you. We're very proud to have you with us. Now we are in week 4, and Dani and the whole team decided to make this webinar that we can deepen now quite some of the questions that you might have. The process, correct me, Dani, if this is not wrong, if this is wrong, if this is not right, is that we have some questions received before from you. So we selected now 4, and I'm going to respond to these 4 questions. But these are just initial questions. So if you have more of questions, just write it in the chat. Christina will receive it, send it over from Germany here to us in Latin America, and then we're going to include this in the discussion. We have now in the chat 12 participants. The number is rising. Depending on the numbers, we might also open during the discussion the participation from you in an oral way.
Perfect.
So we're going to start.
So we're going to start. The first question, can you break down the main objectives in reporting both impact and financial returns as they relate to maximum impact?
This is a key question that is mostly discussed in non-profit organizations, but these days also in profit organizations, and particularly when you're a social enterprise. The question is focusing on the reporting on financial numbers or financial results on the one hand, and social and environmental results on the other hand. And there are, I guess, at least 3 key issues that you need to look at when you are dealing with these issues. So the first one is you need to ask the question, for whom do you create this information? So depending who it is, this person, this board, or in the respect to the MOOC that we are doing, investors that are also coming from outside, they need information, they need reporting. But they have special expectations for numbers and informations. And you need, before writing a report, to understand these necessities of information of these managers or investors. And the reason for that is, on the inside of the organization, most of the managers, they got a lot of different reports and a lot of information. If you're a very small organization, you have tons of information based on the internet or from informal discussions inside the organization. And there you need to select. So you need to focus on the information they need. And that's the reason, break it down to what they want to have. The second, what you need to look at, they need information mainly to make a decision. So try to find out what kind of decision they want to make and then adapt the information. So this is the first, understand the people who will use the report. The second is the question of the integration of both numbers. So when you have financial numbers on one side and social environmental numbers on the other side, then it's the question not just to create 2 reports independently. So you have a financial report on the one side, social environmental report on the other side, but somehow to make this, in particular, the social environmental part more relevant, you need to create the link between both. Or, in particular, non-profit organization, vice versa. If you have a financial report, you need to make it clear what's the impact of the financial report to the social environmental part. I'll give you an example. When you're working in a non-profit organization, the non-profit organization is focusing on supporting kindergartens. And you have a number of children that you integrate in the kindergarten. You can measure the quality of the services that you get there. You can measure the impact of the kindergarten, of the life quality of the whole family. You're reporting this on the one side. On the other side, you're reporting donations that you received. And then you need to ask the question, what kind of relation do the donations have to these numbers on the social side? But why is this important in that case of the kindergarten? It is important for when you're communicating this outside afterwards, that you understand how much information on the social environment part do I need to show to my donors that they really received the impact that they wanted to achieve. On the other side, I need to be capable to report to my internal employees, these might be employees, these might be our staff, how much money do they really need and have at the very moment to execute their projects. In that sense, I need to integrate both informations. I give you another example, more on the profit side. So when you're a company that is focusing on creating furniture, but you're doing it in a way that is quite sustainable, and you're in the very beginning, you're reporting your return on your returns, your sales, your incomes, your EBITDAs on the one side. On the other side, you're reporting how strongly did you support your workers, you report how strongly did you reduce the negative external effects of your productions, or how strongly did you support the community you're working with. When you have both, and then you report it, the managers, usually the directors, they're looking first on the financial part. But when you're not explaining them how strongly do they really do an effect on the community, have an impact, might have an impact on the income, they would not take the social environmental part for granted. So there you need to explain, if the company makes negative external effects on the community might react on that and say, please, we shouldn't work for this company. So you might have difficulties to receive enough employees. And if you don't have enough employees, this might affect immediately your financial income. So the integrated, second topic, the integrated reporting is key in that. The third topic on that is the question of how do you present the data? At the very moment, we are still in a situation where most of the organization have strong difficulties to report the social and environmental part. The financial reporting part is usually set in a quite professional way, as there's tons of different informations in the market that you can use to structure that. But when you go in the social financial part, most of the organization, they don't have enough instruments to measure this. And as a consequence, what you find on that part are usually stories and more an emotional reporting. They're presenting photos, they're presenting stories. And that's not enough. If you go on the social environment part, there are already lots of instruments how you can measure in quantitative numbers the impact on the social environmental part. The problem there still is that we don't have any standards. We don't have that are internationally common. We don't have enough guidelines to implement. And this is the reason why most of the organizations are creating usually their own individual way of measuring it. And that's the reason why we still have an imbalance in that part. So in a nutshell, 3 issues. First, you need to understand who is using the data, and you need to adapt the reporting to the decision makers and their needs. Second, try to create an integrated reporting that is integrating the social, environmental, and the financial part to explain the relation between both. And the third, try to find methods that are supporting you to measure the social environmental impact and get over of the emotional stories in reporting that part.
Thank you. That's for our first question. Then I'm going to the second. Can you explain exit options like the qualified IPO, drag-along rights, and liquidation preferences?
Before I ask that, I need to state very clearly, I am not an expert in these technicalities of creating the contracts with venture capitalists, in particular in these instruments that the question is raising. And we are now in week 4, and we come to these topics in at least latest in week 7. And if you have questions in respect to the contract technicalities, please write it down in the chats that we have in the MOOC. And there we're going to discuss, and we have our experts on that, and they're going to enter and discuss these issues with you. Nevertheless, this is a key issue, and we also mentioned this in the MOOC. This is the last step that we call exit. We need to be clear that exit has two parts. One is not all the organizations that are entering in an investment need to have an exit. So when you receive a donation, obviously you get the money, you're using the money is not going out, and that's it. No exit is needed in there. But if you have an investor that is an impact investor and an investor who has its own structure that he needs to get out after 3 years or 4 years, some of them they have internal rules that they cannot invest more than 4 years, there you need to understand this before you get in contact with them. And you need to think about instruments like these that are mentioned in the question to offer this to your investor. When you go into impact investors, many of them, and this is in particular also in the financial parts, they expect this from entrepreneurs to offer them different ways and opportunities to get the exit option. The second point is when you're going in the exit discussion, this depends absolutely to the environment where you're working in. In Europe, there are many different instruments and alternatives of investments where you can discuss about exit options. So if an investor is in there, you have alternatives to get other investments, and that's the reason exit is possible. Here in Latin America, we know it from the market, where investment markets are not working that way like in the developed world. There's not too many options for alternatives of the investment. So if you want or not, there's nearly no option to get an exit. And then you need to find other ways. In Latin America, particularly here in Central America, what we find is that the investors are usually investing and getting money and investing in the organization and never can get out again. For them, they know it in the beginning, and that's something you need to discuss with them in the moment when you enter in a discussion with them.
Perfect. So I'm going to speak about from the difference between two regions. Now I have a question related to Europe. How would you bring impact investing to a larger scale in Europe and explain the idea of impact investing as well building investment opportunities for retail investors? The second part, which outreach strategy would you suggest in order to achieve this?
That's a huge question. And currently, it's, as I know from Björn and Christina, it's strongly discussed in Europe. And it's not easy, as this is precisely what the politicians are currently discussing. Some banks trying to get in there, and the whole impact investment discussion tries to increase its impact. Try to answer, but please take this in it's a humble answer, and it's my perspective on it. I know there are many other opinions in the market. I see mainly 3 issues again. The first one is the question of, it's like before, how to measure the impact in the social environmental part. We are still, again, not there that we have standards, internationally accepted standards for how to measure the social environmental impact. If we are comparing this to the financial markets, there we have on a macro level global standards, how we need to structure the markets, how we need to report. We have the global financial and capital market, actually one of the most functioning markets at the very moment. There we have the national standards nearly each country have national standards on how do we need to report on the financial part. And on instrument level, for company level, how to measure these impacts, we have tons of different instruments that we can select in a company to implement these measurements. When it comes now, and we have a lot of experts who have a strong discussion on all these levels. When it comes to the social environmental part, we have on the global level, the standards are still missing. If we go to a market idea, we have the bonds markets in the environmental part in Europe, but it's not extended too much. We don't have any market in respect to social impact. So the market mainly is missing in comparison to the financial market. If we go on the national level, in the national level, we have orientations, we have politics, we have laws that are trying to structure it. We have different INGOs that try to influence it, but it's not really a standard that gives you an orientation. When it comes to the instrument part, like I said before in the first question, we don't have a clear orientation. So when it comes to the second part, that is not the social environmental, you don't have clear guidelines or instruments. And this makes an imbalance now when it comes to impact investment. An impact investor that is going in Europe and trying to invest in organizations can be quite precisely and clear on his financials, but cannot be precisely in his social environmental part. Not because this impact investor is good or bad, just because the context is not providing the same instruments. And that's the reason when we need to support now impact investment, we should start working on increasing the 4 elements I talked about in the social environmental part. First, we need to have instruments that are measuring the impact in a better way. Second, we need national standards and European standards that are defining what's a good or bad manner to measure social environmental impacts. And third, if we're going on a global level, as in particular, impact investors are not just European impact investors, not just investing in Europe, but also all over the world in emerging markets. We know this from Latin America. They need to find standards also for investments in Latin America. Give you an example what can be done. One for me, one of the initiatives that are most innovative at the very moment in the market is for me the Social Progress Index. The Social Progress Index is a way to measure currently the social progress of different countries. And they have 52 indicators, I'm not sure, 52 or some more, how they're using to measure the progress of a country and how a country is increasing the social progress. And they are defining, based on the data, different areas that the country needs to invest in to support its social progress. So it's on a macro level, a standard that is already established that is increasing. Currently, they have more than 56 countries that are including these numbers. So this gives us a macro orientation. If we would now be capable to break these macro level numbers down on the organizational level, that it might be possible for an investor to measure its impact in the Social Progress Index. For instance, if you are investing as an impact investor in Latin America, in a region in the north of Argentina, you're investing there in an organization that is buying llama from a region from the indigenous. And now you need to measure the social environmental impact. What can you do? You make a first analysis with the Social Progress Index of the environment of the indigenous. Where are they? Where are the needs for social progress index, social progress in this region? Then you invest, and after 1 year you analyze the social progress index again, and you can compare. In that way, you can make it transparent. What's the difference now? This instrument to other instruments that are on the market. This has already a relation to a discussion that starts globally, where countries are including the Social Progress Index and is emerging to a standard. So in that sense, this is the first level when it comes to impact assessment. Second, it's in line with impact assessment. The status quo of venture capitalists, of impact investors and others when it comes to the social environmental part is that they are investing in 2 levels. We call this deep, they're trying to report deep scaling or upscaling. It's deep scaling or upscaling because their interest is to invest in an organization to make it grow afterwards. And grow afterwards means they need to scale. And they are trying to measure how strongly do they scale thanks to my investment. But what they are measuring currently is called just upscaling. Upscaling means they are measuring the numbers of increasing beneficiaries, the numbers how the organization is increasing its professionality internally. But they are not they don't have enough instruments to measure the deep scaling. And the deep scaling is the part, how can this organization not just scale in numbers, but also scale in the quality that they are providing for the beneficiaries. There might be a trade-off. The more beneficiaries you have, the less you can have increased the life quality of your beneficiaries. That's not clear. It's an empirical question. That's the reason these impact investors need to have both numbers for upscaling and also for deep scaling. Third, this is a question of reputation and maybe positioning of impact investment in Europe. What I would never do is currently try to position impact investment as an alternative to the traditional investment. It's currently the discussion where it's going. I see it. But for me, that's the wrong way to do it. As when you have enough money, you don't want to invest in the financial market and get returns, market returns. You're willing to reduce your market returns, but you want to have social environmental impact. That's the reason you go to impact investors. But can we talk about a tiny piece of the whole part of the financial markets that we have impact investment? What would be much more interesting to see is whether there's a discussion to present impact investment as the more intelligent investment than an investment that is just focusing on financials. Why that? If you're investing on the financial part only, the ones that, as far as I know, are the better investors are the ones who know the company they're investing in as good as they could even replace the management. When they would be capable to replace the management, this means they have knowledge on the business that they are doing that is much more than just the financials. So they're going in social environmental issues, including all the non-economics in the evaluation. There, they can judge the risk much better way. They're not just focusing on financials. So if this is true also for financials, for the financial investors, that they need to look at the social environmental part and the non-economic parts to reduce the risk in the investments, and this is precisely the argument of impact investment, that they want to impact companies to have an impact in social environmental parts. Obviously, there seems to be a link, and it might be a good discussion to see whether, again, impact investment is the more intelligent way of having investments in the market. To do this, we need numbers. So we need to analyze the impact of impact investors. We need to see whether this is really creating more value. We need to evaluate whether they can manage risk in a better way than the other investors. We need to see how they are measuring it, the impact, and how they are processing this. All this part is still missing. So we need to have studies, empirical investigations on impact investors and know the way of working much more profound to get into a discussion like that. Again, the discussion will be presenting impact investment as the more intelligent way to invest.
Thank you, Urs. I have another question now from the other side, saying from an investor perspective, kindly share some thoughts on the key financial issues to look out for.
From the investor, what they need to look at?
From the investor perspective.
Yeah.
So what some thoughts on the key financial issues that they need to focus on?
If you are investing in a company and you need to find out how are the financials, what they need to have are the basic financial numbers. This is clear. They need to understand what are the incomes. They need to understand what are the costs inside the company. They need to understand how is the company financed, how much self-equity they have, how much foreign capital they include. These are the basic numbers of the organization. But it's not all they need to have. They need much more in that. Finally, the more information you get on the financials of the organization, mainly the whole budget they get, the prospect of the investor for the coming 5 years. Tell me, please, how we are investing now and where are going next year, the next 2 or 3 years. There you know where the company is today and where the company expects to go in the future. Based on this information, you might have enough then to evaluate whether this company is healthy and sustainable in a financial way or not. But also in these financials, you are an impact investor. This wouldn't be enough. So again, there you need to have the other part and numbers on upscaling, so numbers on beneficiaries that try to reach in the coming 5-6 years, increase it, and also in respect to deep scaling, how they want to increase the quality of life of their beneficiaries in the coming 3, 4, 5 years.
Thank you. Well, I have a question regarding Central American region. How would you evaluate the growth of impact investment in this region? What is missing?
Nearly all. This is one of the strongest questions, not just for impact investment, it's for investment per se. The whole discussion on venture capitalists in Central America is a discussion that is at the very beginning. When we talk about venture capitalists, and we talk about the venture capitalists from the book, there we talk about investors that get money from people who want to invest, and they are capable then to decide whether they want to invest in a company based on risk analysis and expectation of return on investment. In Latin America, that's not the case. We have venture capitalists, but most owners of the venture capitalists are families. And the families, they're very close to the venture capitalists. And where do the families want to invest? They want to invest in their friends, in their families, in their environment, their communities. So the venture capitalist who has the families investing in them is not free in deciding in whom they want to invest. That's the reason currently what I see in the market is the status quo as I saw it from my discussions with venture capitalists in the region at the moment, is that venture capitalists is just an instrument that our families using in the same way that they invested before in the family logic. So before coming directly to impact investment, we need first to discuss what is possible for the families that have the money in the region to invest in companies in general, not just in social enterprises or social businesses, but in companies and small startups in general. This is the first. The second, most of the money we have in Central America is owned by the. So we have a lot of money in Central America, but the families are the owners, and they are the ones who can decide on it. And when they invest, most of them invest in very traditional areas. They're investing in hotels, investing in infrastructure, or they're investing outside of Central America. Or they're investing in different regions, different branches, and they create their famous grupos to distribute their risk. So we need to work with these families. We need to convince them to invest in the region. One day I talked with the leaders, the global leaders of communities of impact investment. And I asked them, what do we need to do that we can invite the greatest leaders to Central America to present what is impact investment and what can impact investment contribute to the money that we have and contribute to the social progress of the region and also the income for the increase of the income of the families. And they told me, if you can get $3 billion at the table, this means getting the owners of these family businesses getting at the table, and all them together, they are representing $3 billion, then we could invite these people and they will come. And I guess this could be one of the first steps that we need to do. We go and try to bring that on a table and invite 2 or 3 of the international experts that will explain this to them. This is the first. Second, I doubt that we can do this with the current generation. They made an excellent job. It's brilliant what they're investing. The growth in some parts of the region, they are impressive to see. We have huge problems, nothing against that. But we need to also to see what is working. And a lot is working thanks to these families and what they are doing. But what I see, there's a new generation coming. Not just in different parts of the business that is pushing the social enterprise part, but also in these families. They're asking other kind of questions. And maybe this could be the second step. We should bring this new generation at the table and start to discuss with them. You have access to this money. What can you do? What can you do to contribute to social progress of the region? What can you do to create wealth for your family? And how can you invest in a more intelligent way? And there we get into the discussion of how can they use the techniques of impact investment. And I guess working with these families, this will be the first step that we need to do.
Thank you, Urs. For the moment, we don't have more questions, but I have a few. One of them will be, what are the main mistakes social entrepreneurs do when they're approaching to impact investors? We were talking about what is the things that you have to do, but maybe can we just have some insight from your perspective, so why you don't have to do?
First, they are approaching impact investments or investors without preparation. They're knocking at the door and say, please, I'm a good company, you need to believe me and you need to invest in me. And if they say no, you're surprised. So you need to prepare. The second, many of them are trying to present what they are doing in an oral way. They're presenting it by telling the whole business model, by telling the beneficiaries they're supporting, by telling them how they are increasing and contributing to social progress in their communities. But what they are not presenting is how they are measuring it. And the impact investors, they need numbers, mainly. They are very quadratic. And they want to have clear structures of how you report, and they want to have an information how you're going to report in the coming days. This is one of the key issues that the social entrepreneurs are not doing. Third, some of them are, no, most are non-profit organizations who try to do that. And they are coming from the perspective of a non-profit logic and getting inside of the investor. But when I talk about they, that's exactly the mistake they are doing. It's usually one person who says, listen, to their colleague, listen, impact investment is a huge opportunity for us, we need to get them. So this one person from the nonprofit is knocking at the door of the impact investor, is convincing impact investor, and finally, in the best case, she gets them in. But then this person needs to convince his team that impact investment is a good case. And then you have the problem on the table. As most nonprofit organizations, they are against market logic. They are focusing on solidarity, on having impact, and being as close as possible to the beneficiaries. And when someone is coming in and says, listen, there's someone who wants to put money on the table, but they want to have a return for their money, then you have an ideological discussion in your nonprofit organization, whether making money is something good or bad, or whether we need this to support our financial sustainability. So the mistake that is done is they are not preparing their management team for impact investment before they access them.
Great. I have another question. It's a good one. Are structural hybrids well accepted by the US investors?
Again, that's an issue where I need to say I don't know too much about North American investors per se. But when we call about structural hybrids, first we need to define what this is, and then whether investors might accept that. Structural hybrids, as far as I understand, means that on one side, they are investing in their social mission. They're trying to contribute social environmental impact. On the other side, they want to have a sustainable economic model that makes them financially sustainable. So hybrid in the sense they have both sides, economic and social environmental. That's how I define it. So impact investors, want that? Yes or no? 1 year ago, there was a study in MIT Sloan Management Review, and it was a study done by researchers, colleagues that are focusing on sustainability, and they asked investors from the general market, what do you think about sustainability? When you're investing and you make due diligence of the organization, due diligence means you're analyzing the organization with respect to opportunities, return on investment, and their risk. Is sustainability relevant for this? Yes or no? The result was striking, for me at least, as they said, sustainability for us currently is a hygiene factor. So when we're investing, and I'm talking about financial investors, then I expect the companies to have at least the baselines of sustainability. This was the result of this study. When it comes now to other kind of investors, the whole discussion of impact investment came mainly from the US. As in the US, the particular foundation found out that just giving donations, just giving money somewhere, and be happy that you are giving, and you're measuring the impact of the donation based on the number of money that you gave out, this was not enough. So they found out we need to have other measures. We need to measure how this money is working afterwards in the organizations and how this made really the impact. And based on that, this created more an impact orientation in the way how they tried to allocate their money. In that sense, if you look in the US, they have a strong tradition currently in the last 15 years to find out how impact investment, how impact-oriented philanthropy was that in the beginning, could work or not work. So they have a strong root. You have a strong discussion in the question of how to structure impact investment. Biggest new institutions that are coming up that are trying to create new ways of investment inside of banks. Some of them are independent venture capitalists and others. They are growing in the US. So in that sense, the US market is for me in impact investment one of the most prosperous. And as we are in Central America currently, I expect that they are coming to and contributing to our growth in Central America also. So if you're interested in that, you should look in the US, that's for sure.
Thank you. I don't think we have more questions for now. Yes, we have one more. Okay, I'm just going to wait. But I have another question as well. You were talking before about NGOs. We see them as social entrepreneurs as well. What do you recommend for them for not being afraid, maybe to focus or have more a market perspective into their business model or organizational model?
Usually when they talk about that, the first question they have is whether their formal structure allows them to include investors in the organization. So when you are an association, when you are a foundation, are you capable to include in impact investors, yes or no? And usually they are focusing on being a cooperative, being a foundation or others, when it's coming to the question whether they are a non-profit, yes or not. So it's very law-oriented. And it's law-oriented in the sense of their identity of being a non-profit. But this is simply wrong, as the formal structure of a company is simply an instrument how you need to structure the company. And it's not your identity of being a non-profit or not a non-profit. The identity of being a non-profit comes mainly from your mission, comes from the way how you intend to contribute to beneficiaries. And the law and the formal structure of your organization can be changed without touching the identity. And this is one of the key understandings the non-profits need to have, that the law structure and the identity are something different. This creates them opportunity and freedom to discuss about the law structure, mainly change it, and even get into a public organization to reform in an extreme way. I know this in Germany. the German church, some of them. They have hospitals and others, and they are public organizations. And they are 100% in the market, but with a strong social mission in the center. And it works. This is a question of management. This is a question of leadership. This is a question of contribution to projects in the right way, and not of the law structure. So separate the discussion of the law structure and the bylaws. Sorry, this is the technical term. Separate the discussion on the bylaws on the one hand and the identity of being a nonprofit, yes or no.
Thank you. Another relevant question. What do you think about social impact bonds? Are they a good way to introduce impact investing model to invest in markets on national level when there is no tradition for impact investing?
This is for me one of the biggest opportunities that we have currently also in Latin America, social bonds. Social bonds is a way where the government and investors, they can share the risks. This is simply the most intelligent way I saw how you can share this. So how does this work? On the one hand, the government has the interest to invest in organizations that are contributing to the growth of the region. That's their political task. The investors, they want to have return on investments. So what are they doing? They are coming together. The government is giving money to a fund, to a social bond. The social bond is investing inside the social businesses, and the government is guaranteeing the return on investment to the venture capitalists, to the investors. So the investors receive in any way, in any case, the expected return on investment, and the government can in any way invest in the organization they intend to invest. And that's the reason it's a circle, really simple, that works and is quite productive. For regions like Latin America, we don't have enough impact investments. This might be an option to get in. Particularly when the government, like in Argentina, is currently looking for new structures to invest effectively. Their problem, most of the governments in Latin America, is corruption inside of the public system. So they need to go in structures that can bypass the public system. And a social bond could be an instrument, a structure that is helping a government to bypass its own institutions and go there, invest directly inside of the companies. And for the investors in the region, this could be an answer, as investors, when they are coming from Europe and they're investing in emerging markets like Latin America, they expect huge return investments because they expect these markets to be high risk. And to convince them to invest bonds that is guaranteeing part of the return on investment could be a convincing argument. In that sense, yes, could be. And I hope we have some more examples in the region. Roots of Impact, Björn Struber is working on that, and I'm observing and discuss him and his work and discussing a lot with him on that, just to see whether this is really an answer. And the final answer, whether this works or not, is an empirical one. So we need to observe them and to see whether it works and study the way they worked with their investments to make the quality afterwards in a better way.
Okay. Thank you again. So I don't think, Brian, do we have more questions now? Okay. So I think we're coming to the end. So thank you, Urs. Thank you to all our team that is helping. And thank you to all of you that are here, hearing us, and doing our course online, the Access to Impact Investments for Social Enterprises. So this week, we're going to start the week 5. So we're hoping that you can do our lecture videos as well as the worksheets. So Christine is going to be also answering all your questions on the forums. So please share on Twitter or Facebook all your thoughts, your insight as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
So
thank you all.
Bye-bye.